I believe, oh, thank you to whoever's running this meeting. From that side, thank you, Jen. Commissioner DeBonne is actually in Michigan for his father's service, so he won't be with us this morning. Hopefully he arrived there, because he flew yesterday morning at like 5 a.m. Um, Commissioner updates. Is Commissioner Chang on? Well, we can always go back to that. I see, Doug, do you want to do your update? And then I see Senator McLean is with us already.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner and staff. Good to see you this morning, Friday morning. This was the week we've all been waiting for to see what the revenue forecast might portend. The revenue forecast is down compared to the last forecast. The official number that they said that they quoted was $755 million, but actually about 250 million of that reserve kind of available amount of money for this session had already been allocated for wildfires. So in essence, the revenue forecast, I believe, is down by about $500 million. That still means that spending, the amount of money available for spending is up from the last biennium by approximately $2 billion. This was pointed out in the Revenue Committee a couple days ago. But costs are going up. Inflation is going up, and many programs have higher costs than they expected. So I think based on my conversations Wednesday and yesterday with Ways and Means Committee members, I think they're worried about the drop in revenue projections, and they're also worried about the potential that the state could lose funding from the federal government, particularly for Medicaid funding. The new Medicaid proposals that have come out have a number of requirements in them that aren't outright cuts, but are requirements that could reduce revenue. For instance, required eligibility checks on a more regular basis, which has been shown to reduce Medicaid rolls. Work requirements, which are something that we've certainly heard about in past years. And then the third big change the feds might impact that could impact the state would be a prohibition on using Medicaid dollars for undocumented individuals. And that could lead to a fairly significant drop in federal revenue coming in for Medicaid. So while I think the Ways and Means co-chairs are concerned about the revenue forecast, my sense this week is they're even more concerned about this potential reduction in the money that the state gets for Medicaid. So so what does that mean? Well, fortunately for Deschutes County, our big capital ask for the last two sessions, the courthouse, et cetera. But this will impact things like impacts funding, potentially community corrections funding, behavioral health, workforce development, things of that nature. And so we have to keep an eye on that. So my guess is that this initial surprise or shock about the budget will wear off. They will realize that they have money to spend. It's just a matter of where they put the money. How do they prioritize the funding? And that's what the the game will be. One last thing I'll say is that today is the second and final public hearing for the Capital Construction Subcommittee. That begins at 1:00. I know we have a number of people signed up from the Core 3 team who plan to testify, and we'll see if they get to them. They might not get to them because the Core 3 team showed up in force for the Warm Springs hearing. So I think they're first turning to people who have not had that opportunity to testify, and then we'll turn to others. One last thing I'll say, because I know it's been front and center on our priority list and the commission list, which has been wildfire. Senate Bill 85 and Senate Bill 75 and Senate Bill 83 were all in the Climate Committee yesterday. Senate Bill 85 passed, Senate Bill 75 and Senate Bill 83, which is the major repeal the wildfire maps, are being held back at the request of the Speaker. Not quite sure why that is. We'll find that out in the next few days. But I do see that Senator McLean is on, and he's probably got much more insight, and he's on the Revenue Committee and asked a lot of very good questions on Wednesday. So he might have some insight on the on the occurrences of the week.
Thank you, Doug. Senator McLean.
Yeah, thank you. I think Doug captured it quite nicely. You know, there is a variance in the forecast that was a tad confusing on whether we had an additional 5 billion or an additional 2 billion. But one thing's for sure, you know, we have twice as much as we had 10 years ago. And so we have to remember that as some decisions are made. The forecast may have been down from the March forecast, but it was basically even to the December forecast. And, you know, economists do a tremendous job, I think, getting, you know, pretty accurate. But it is part, you know, spreading pixie dust, right? Because we don't quite know. And that's why the forecasts being a bit revised from the previous increase, I think most people expected. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I'm sure Doug and I could get through that. There's also a slide deck if you're really excited about wanting to see the different numbers. There is a good slide deck you can get off the Legislative Information System, or OLIS, and the you know, it talks about something which I think should alarm Central Oregon counties is you know, the state trend in employment and the manufacturing decline, construction decline, and you know, government and government adjacent, some service sectors are the ones that are increasing. And I think ultimately, you know, we want to see a robust private sector since they, you know, pay a lot of our bills. So, but otherwise, any questions on the forecast I can answer?
Are there any raised hands?
Okay, well, then my other updated, well, there's the hand.
Commissioner Chang.
Okay.
Good morning, Senator. Something I'd love to ask all of the legislators this morning is what kind of effects they think this revenue forecast will have on some of the packages that don't have a lot of general fund in them, transportation package, the wildfire package, and, you know, I guess what kind of transportation and wildfire packages you picture yourself voting for in before the session is over.
Well, I'll keep the latter question to myself because I don't even know what they are. I'm not in the transportation discussion other than being you know, in briefings on it. There doesn't seem to be consensus. So I don't know if there's going to be a transportation package or not. And I don't think it's going to be robust projects. It may be a maintenance level, which is troubling to think that we would raise gas tax, you know, by 50% and not have the packages. In 2017, when we did that, I was more involved and voted for it. And, you know, one of the things that we got and which required my vote for it was the Cooley Road fix. And so, you know, when you can go home and sell that, you can, you know, 10 to 12 cents a gallon increase because the state benefited by so much, and including that Cooley Road, which I think was a very successful project. But I'm not hearing really much going on here. There may be a And I think when it comes to wildfire, it's been a general fund, obligation since statehood. I think there's a couple different ideas that seem to be floating, but one is the attaching a funding mechanism to bottle sales, and then I think that's lost steam. So I do think that the general fund may be kicking in more for fire because we don't have or projected fire costs, because I don't think there's consensus on funding. But one thing I've learned is with 6 weeks left in the session, well, a lot still can get done.
Thank you for that. If I could say, House Bill 2017 included a lot of goody capital new projects, but it really underfunded and neglected basic operations and maintenance. And from what I can see, that's what the legislature is trying to fix now. Is they're trying to balance out that over commitment to new capital projects from House Bill 2017 by getting back to basics and providing adequate funding for operations and maintenance. So, I mean, we will not see adequate snow plowing, to get over the passes or to get from Lapine to Bend. We will not see potholes fixed. We will not see response to dead wildlife on the side of the road, unless we get a decent transportation package with adequate operations and maintenance funding out of this session.
Yeah, I'd love to see what the consensus is. Like I said, I'm not in that small group discussion, but it does. I don't think I'm prepared to vote for to 20 cents a gallon gas tax, but I hopefully they'll come up with something.
Great. I see Senator Linthicum and Representative Retschke have joined us, and welcome any comments you might have on the announcements of the week.
Sure. Good morning, and good to be with y'all. I'll just say on the wildfire bill, that's in House Revenue right now, and as Senator McLean said, I think the sticking point right now is the bottle bill tax. I don't think that has the legs. With that in there, it kind of stops the bill. So the challenge has been find funding somewhere else, and other than the general fund. And so one of the ideas, and I've got an amendment, but can't post it yet because there's no event happening with that bill yet. But once an event happens, like an informational meeting or a work session, then that amendment will get posted, is to take interest from the rainy day fund and use it. So the rainy day fund's about $1.8 billion, $1.9 billion. And at 5%, that would generate 90 million or so a year. So $180 million. And the bottle bill tax was estimated to be about $200 million a biennium. So you would take the bottle bill out, put this mechanism in there, which is kind of an ongoing thing because the rainy day fund is there. And you don't touch the rainy day fund. You just take the interest rather than it rolling into the rainy day fund. It then goes to the wildfire bill. So that's one idea there. Transportation, House Republicans introduced a counter proposal, which was no tax increases, but just reformed ODOT and spending cuts. That was about $650 million, and that would achieve the goal of keeping ODOT whole and being able to do operations and maintenance. So that's part of the discussion now, and I know the committee's taking a look at that. I've disappeared here because the sun's come out.
Thanks for that. The the House Republican transportation proposal also basically zeroes out state investment in public transportation.
Right, local, and before 2017, that was zero, and so we're going back that direction. But there's a proposal to phase that out as opposed to just cutting it off. And so we believe that if local communities want to do that, then they can raise the money, but the state obligation is to the highways and the roads the state maintains. And so that would be a change, and that'd be a policy decision the legislature would have to make.
Yeah, I mean, House Bill 2017 instituted a very small payroll tax specifically for the purpose of funding public transportation. So would you picture, my impression is that that package is proposing phasing out public transportation, but also keeping the payroll tax for
Correct.
other purposes.
For operations and maintenance, yeah, to go back to the
Yeah.
core functions of ODOT, correct.
Yeah, I'm, basically the way that payroll tax was justified was to improve public transportation, and
Yeah.
it seems like phasing out the public transportation investments but keeping the payroll tax is sort of it's a little bit of a bait and switch or shell game with the taxpayers.
Yeah. Looking at public transportation, that about 60% of that money goes to Metro, to the Portland metro area, and ridership is down. And so we've invested a lot of money there from the state, and yet we see ridership on the decrease from what it was in 2017 or 2019, I think it was. So again, there'll be a discussion, and it's a proposal, and so we'll see how all that works out in the end.
Yeah, well, I hope that someone's reminding people during that discussion that we have 500,000 rides per year in the Central Oregon region that depend upon that foundational public transit funding from the state.
Very good.
But I think for the first time, they're going to actually have to start paying. Instead of just charging the people that are going water rafting or going skiing, other people are supposed to pay something. So yes, I think we've had free buses for quite a while. Senator Lithicum, you're online?
That's great. That's great. But the cost to collect fees from fares from people riding public transit, the administrative costs are massive. So charging people a fare is basically a wash because it costs so much money to administer a system to collect some small fares from people.
Well, maybe we'll have to reevaluate which system we're using. Senator Lithicum, nice to see
Good
you.
morning.
You want to
Yeah,
say
good morning. Rep. Reschke and Senator McLean gave you a great overview, as well as Doug, regarding all the revenue and all that. That's really what's happening now and going forward. I'm in the policy committee, so I am not on the committees that Senator McLean and Rep. Reschke are on. So they're a little bit more in the heartbeat of those. Of course, Doug is keeping abreast of those too. So my policy committees were healthcare. We've still got some bills coming through on that. Early childhood had its last informational hearing, which was, I thought, interesting, and you all might find that interesting. It was regarding marijuana. So we've created all these problems with legalizing drugs and marijuana, and thankfully, some lights are coming on, and they actually recognized that it was a gateway drug in this informational hearing, which they refused to recognize when they first did this. The argument was constantly that it's just like a glass of wine or whatever. So recognizing the higher potency and all that. So, when we have those informational hearings, typically it's because the chair of that committee, in this case being Senator Reynolds, is interested in maybe bringing a bill or some concept in the following session, possibly the short or the long. But it's good to see that she's open to this. She was pretty intense in the meeting in terms of the destruction that these policies have caused. so that was encouraging to me because I agree wholeheartedly, and I think we need to make some adjustments. You know, the only other thing that I would note, as Rep. Reschke mentioned, the kicker. So it was presented to us on the Senate floor by Senator Golden as it's SB 1177. It had a public hearing in Finance and Revenue on the 7th of April. And it hasn't moved from there. But he presented it, handed out a floor letter regarding that bill, promoting that bill. And his language was, and so I think this is the same one that Rep. Reschke was referencing, the same dollar figure, that it was the kicker. So we're going to use this kicker one time, and then the interest on that money. So the what do you call it? The base amount will not be used, but the interest going forward would be used to fight fires. That's always a hard sell. So I think that's why he was presenting it to us on the floor. So anyway, that's out there as well, SB 1177. So we'll see what happens there in these final days. So my committees are winding down. We're just pushing the bills through and seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's great. Thank you very much to all three of you. And I continue to appreciate the open door, and you've all been very helpful and always have an open door for us when we come in with issues. I will mention that we are continuing to work with one of your colleagues, Representative Krupp, on House Bill 3069. I won't go into the details now, but that attempts to reform the grant process through the Criminal Justice Commission for a number of programs that we have in our bailiwick in the county. So haven't seen the final amendment, but once that bill comes through, it will have a great impact on the county. And then I also see Reagan Canope has joined us. I see his hand is up as well.
Hello. Sorry, I missed the prompt that would put me in the speaker's queue. So I apologize for that, but just appreciate this call and everyone on this call working. It does seem to be a bit of a dead zone right now. Not a lot moving in Ways and Means beyond some small budgets. The big budgets, I think they're still either fine tuning them or having to make some decisions based on the revenue forecast. Down about 750 million in available resources that may have already been covered. And then just sort of, you know, everybody's trying to keep their remaining living bills alive. And so a lot of stuff really does die off in that first chamber deadline, but just because you pass that deadline doesn't mean your bill is guaranteed to pass. So there's still, you know, finishing work to do as that deadline hits next week for a second chamber. And then after that, really, it does get into budgets and whatever leadership keeps alive in the rules committee in terms of stuff, and make them plan to go home in the final 5 weeks.
Reagan, it's Commissioner Dare. How about House Bill 3135? The
We
Juniper
very
bill.
much like our chances. I think arguing to set up new programs will be very hard given the budget situation, but this is an ongoing cost to collect data, and that data is related to giving us more water, especially in areas that struggle with water like the Deschutes Basin. So we feel very good about it at this point, and appreciate all your support on the Juniper removal continued funding.
Great. 5.2 million for 7 counties. I noticed it started out at 15 million. So yeah, I'm hoping it'll pass. Representative Reschke, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Thanks. Just on the revenue forecast. So there's the classic debate between Democrats and Republicans, what that meant. And so I'll give you a quick analogy how to describe that. So Democrats are saying, and media has picked this up, that revenue is down a couple $100 million, which is nothing. It's something. And Republicans are saying, but the budget has increased, and it will increase over the previous biennium. It's like if you put on your MAPS program, and your MAPS program says, you'll be 20 minutes early. And so you're driving along, and as you go along, you find out a little bit further into the trip that you're not going to be 20 minutes early. You're going to be 25 minutes. You're going to be 15 minutes early. So you lost 5 minutes, but you're still going to be early. You're still going to be 15 minutes early. So the question is, did the original estimate of 20 minutes, did you lose something from that? Or the other question is, are you really going to be early or not? So that's something you'll read in the media. You'll hear about a loss or a decline. And I think what that means in the Ways and Means, what I saw yesterday, just even on a small budget bill in general government, is that a POP was taken out for a new person. And the LFO, Legislative Fiscal Office analyst, had said basically that that they were going back to current service level budgets, that they were stripping out all these extras. So if that's true, unless there was some sort of extraordinary circumstance. So expect most agency budgets, at least at the smaller level, just going to be current service level, no increases for this, that, or the other thing. And my guess is that capital projects will get funded because that's bonding with lottery dollars, et cetera. But I think the Christmas tree bill, the reconciliation bill at the end of the year, I think that's going to be quite skinny. And I think that doesn't have a whole lot to do with the revenue forecast. I think that has to do more with the uncertainty of the economy and Democrats wanting to hold on to a lot of cash to see what happens in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act 2.0 bill, how that affects revenue, as well as what happens to Medicaid, as well as tariffs, as well as. So I think they're going to pass pretty thin budgets with a lot of cash held back for doing some other things. So that's the way I read the tea leaves 6 weeks out.
Yeah, Representative, that was a sense I got as well in the last couple of days in talking to Ways and Means members. And just, I think that what they'll do is they'll put that money into what they call a special purpose appropriation, or a SPA. And then what that does is that gives the emergency board, which is the committee, basically it's Ways and Means that's shifted into the interim, that gives the emergency board the authority to allocate that money without a vote of the full body. So
it's the shadow government. Yes, it's the shadow government.
Right.
And normally that's about $50 million that goes in there. I expect that to be significantly more.
I have a question about SB 916. It's in the House now. Is it going ahead?
That's a great question. I think all those questions, so there are a lot of bills in committees that people have concerns about or are anticipating that are in the final chamber and have had a public hearing. But I don't remember if it's probably been scheduled for a work session, but hasn't moved forward yet. We'll just have to see. You know, it's I don't know if it has the votes to get out of that committee yet or not. And if it does, I don't know if it has the votes to pass the floor. So that might be its delay, is the lack of floor votes and whipping to try to get floor votes to get that across the finish line. We'll see, but I don't know.
That bill is incredibly impactful to about, 3/4 of our counties.
I think it's going to be detrimental to local government. I think it's going to be just absent and to school districts. I think it's I understand the intent behind the bill, but I think the real impact to local governments and to school districts is going to be, it could be catastrophic.
Yes, exactly. So please don't pass that bill. I mean, Oregon already we have one of the highest gas taxes and we're at the top. When you fill up, I love hearing how much they want to add, 8 cents, 4 cents, another 4 cents. Yes. So anyway. Has anyone else joined us, Doug, that you see?
I don't see anyone else unless I'm missing someone.
I think that's it for the legislature's commissioner on this call.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you have any final remarks you wanted to make, Senator McClain?
You know, I serve on Ways and Means and Capital Construction and Judiciary Committee and Vice Chair of the Revenue Committee. So those are my committees. I'm happy to answer any questions about that now or later. And I appreciate the work that Doug does. And of course, When any the commissioners or anybody needs anything or gets hold of me, I try to get back to you. But if for some reason I missed it, please let me know and I'll try to get you an answer quickly.
And I think we just saw your letter, your email just came out this morning. So thank you for that update. And I believe
Thank
I
you.
saw one from Senator Lithicum maybe yesterday or the day before. So thank you for keeping us updated.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
No, we appreciate your time more.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
I mean-
Great day.
Thanks, Senator, and thanks, Reagan and representatives. Appreciate it.
Yes. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
So let's see, is Commissioner Chang, did he come? Commissioner Chang, did you have any updates for the group?
No, what I asked about the wildfire package and the transportation package are the things that interest me the most right now, and I'm not hearing a whole lot of progress on moving those bills. I will remind everyone from Deschutes County that if we don't get a wildfire package this year, it means that rural rangeland owners are going to continue to pay a higher assessment for fire protection than they can afford. And also it'll mean that we're going to be looking to the general fund to bail us out at the end of fire season over and over again. Last year, fire season ended and we owed all the people who protected us all summer long $218 million. And that was withdrawn from the general fund. And that is part of the reason we have $218 million less to spend on justice, public safety and justice services, health services, and education, and all kinds of other things this year. So it really is imperative not just to protect us from fire this coming year, but also to stabilize and make secure all of these other state funding priorities that we have to have a real and meaningful wildfire package come out of the legislature this session.
Speaking of that, what about House Bill 3172, Doug? Is that, it's on our bill list today, and I was just wondering if that had any forward thinking. It's, what is it, like grants for through the state fire marshal?
Yeah, let me hold on. I'm trying to get off. Am I? Oh, my mute. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself and I'm already unmuted. In Ways and Means. So like 532 other bills, it is sitting down on Ways and Means, and they will make a decision on that. A lot of the wildfire bills are on hold, and as I emailed a couple of days ago, our bill that eliminates the connection to wildfire maps for ADUs, since the wildfire maps are not going to exist anymore, Senate Bill 75 was on the schedule for yesterday morning along with Senate Bill 83 and got held up. So I think a lot of these wildfire related bills are kind of waiting for that overall package to be agreed to. I am optimistic that we'll get a wildfire package of some sort. I think that there's really no alternative. And we have to provide some level of funding and some ongoing effort to better respond to the costs and the mechanisms around wildfire suppression and preparation. So I'm confident that at the end of the day, Senate Bill 83 will move. Senate Bill 75 is held up because it has a relating to clause that might be useful. So the speaker, I think, thinks I might need to amend a bill that has a relating to clause that fits something like this. So that's why it was held up. I want to make just a couple of comments going back to the discussion on the revenue forecast, just for the good of the order here. The state is really faced with a budget that has what I call the three ones, the $1 billion issues. Issue number one is $1.6 billion in the kicker. So this is kind of, insider baseball, but as you remember, the last fall, the governor fired the state economist. And the reason the governor fired the state economist was because the state economist kept underestimating state revenues, and state revenues were coming in higher, and therefore we had a kicker. So what is happening with this revenue forecast? This revenue forecast is much higher than the one at the very beginning of this cycle that the former state economist who got removed from office had predicted. So the first one of those three ones is the $1.6 billion in kicker money. So we have lots more money coming in, but we also are going to have a large kicker, $1.6 billion, which cannot be changed except for a 2/3 vote of the House and Senate, the governor signing it, or the voters. So that's one. The second $1 billion is in this concern about losing Medicaid funding, and that could be $1 to $1.7 billion in federal Medicaid funding. Probably more like one. I think the most likely thing to come out of the federal government is a prohibition on the use of Medicaid funding for undocumented individuals, and that's about $1 billion for the state. Several 100,000 undocumented individuals get health care. That doesn't mean that they won't seek health care. It just means that it won't be paid for by the state. So that's the second one. And the third one is that there is about $1 billion in this budget going into the next budget for salary increases for state workers. So those three ones add up to well over $3 billion. And that's the reason why other programs, when we talk about needing money for community corrections, or talk about needing money for impacts, talk about needing money for wildfires, those three programs, and you could add the $800 million that the governor wants for housing. So then you have 4-1. So that's about $4 billion that are kind of in these untouchable so far pots of money. And so that's why I think you have this difference of opinion on the two sides of the aisle. The Democrats say those are untouchable. Those four $1 billion pots are untouchable. Therefore, or we can't change them. Therefore, we have very little money for the other things. And the Republicans, as you heard earlier, saying, no, we have these other areas where we could reduce funding. So that will be the dynamic in the next few weeks, is trying to figure out, what is required mandatory funding, current service level funding, and then what very small general fund dollars do they have to put on top of it. I think the case that we need to make for the programs that we care about, like community corrections and impacts and behavioral health programs, Core 3, et cetera, is that those programs make a difference in everyday people's lives and down the road drive down costs. And that is an argument that I think the Ways and Means folks understand and share. So, but as some of our representatives said, what they may do instead of making these funding decisions is punt and put a whole bunch of money, maybe $500-600 million, into a special purpose allocation or a SPA, and then let the E-Board come back and make funding decisions down the road. And that creates tremendous uncertainty for programs that counties rely on. And that's the discussion that AOC and all of us county lobbyists have been having daily in the building, is trying to communicate that uncertainty is not helpful to their government partners who provide important services. So sorry for that long-winded discussion.
No.
But that's part of what's going on in the discussion in the Capitol these days.
I so appreciate that, Doug. What about the Capitol building itself? How much over budget is that? And where does that come into play? I just read about a Dirigal building in Pasco that's $300 million over budget. It was a $600 million building to begin with, and it's $300 million over. So what is happening? I mean, nobody's talking about that. Where does that money come from?
Well, I wish that someone would talk about that. You've got me on my soapbox now, Commissioner.
Sorry.
The original announced cost of seismically retrofitting the building in 2008 was, I remember the Senate president saying, I will not spend a dime more than $367 million. It's now reportedly all three phases that have occurred since then are $1.72 billion. And that money comes from bonding authority. So that's bonding authority that could have been used for other projects that was not used for other projects. But unfortunately, I think that cat is out of the bag, and there's no way to stop the construction process. I mean, they are 5 years over time, and you can do the math, but several times over the budget. But that really is a problem. And what that has taken money away, that money probably would have gone to school construction, school seismic upgrades, might have gone to the state fairgrounds or to other state projects, because that's been geo bonding that they've used, not lottery bonding. But it is significantly higher than it was expected and promised to be.
Doug,
4
I'd
times
like
more?
to circle back to the wildfire package discussion. I appreciate your optimism that we're going to get a package. Basically, with the things that I've heard proposed for the wildfire package, besides this bottle fee idea, which I don't think is a good idea, and the idea of a one-time transfer of kicker funds to a wildfire trust program. All of the other ideas are basically just taking general fund dollars and dedicating them to fire, which will have the same net effect that $218 million transfer did last year. It'll be more institutionalized or formalized, right? So the net effect will mean that we have hundreds of millions of dollars less in our general fund to put towards other things, unless we come up with some other ideas for how to generate new revenue, not claw revenue from other places, but generate new revenue to support the wildfire protection and pre-wildfire resiliency and mitigation work that our state so desperately needs. If we get a bill that just institutionalizes taking hundreds of millions of dollars from the general fund to spend on wildfire, I would say that's almost worse than having no bill at all.
I think I worry that Oregon's already at what are the fourth most highly taxed state in the nation. I really believe that we need to look how we're spending our money just a lot more closely. How can we be so highly taxed and yet we're at the bottom? We're at the bottom for our kids in the schools. We're at the bottom well, thank goodness we're going to be adding those 16 beds, Holly. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, I mean, how many years did we have to talk about that? So the 16 beds for the adults, and if the 15 beds, and the 15 beds for the kids come into play in Redmond to serve actually this side of the mountain, I think that's incredibly important. But we tax. And, I just feel like, okay, the money has to be spent more. Are we still the #1 employer of the state? Doug, do we still have 40,000 state employees?
I don't know what the number are. If we're the highest, it would be per capita. But I know that for a fact that the budget in the last 3 biennium have added significant numbers of state employees, and the budgets this year proposed by the agencies propose to add more state employees as well. But I don't know what the numbers are.
I remember seeing that we were the #1 employer, and honestly, so many businesses have left the state. I think we have to become a bit more business friendly. Jen, are there some bills that we should be discussing on our?
Yes, we have 3 topics for today. The first one is HB 5011. Eric Kropp is available to talk about that. And I believe Commissioner Chang has been following this bill as well. So I'll turn it over to Eric.
What page is that on?
It's on page 1. There was a version 2 that was sent out yesterday evening.
Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome.
Hi. HB 5011 provides $880 million for affordable housing in Oregon. The $880 million, and actually Doug mentioned this as the fourth possible $1 billion. But the $880 million is broken down by $700 million for affordable rental housing, $100 million for home ownership, and $80 million for permanent supportive housing. The bond or the funding mechanism for this is general obligation bonds, and HB 5011 is supported by the League of Oregon Cities, and it's currently in the Ways and Means Committee. I don't know if Commissioner Chang wants to add anything. I know that he's been following it through the Regional Housing Council.
Eric, yesterday we were also talking about shelter funding at the joint managed camp meeting with the city of Redmond. Is shelter funding part of this bill, or is it a different bill?
I think it's a different bill because those three broad areas of breakdown do not include shelter funding.
It is a POP. It's POP 101 within the OHCS budget, and it's POP 501, shelter operations POP, and it is a $217 million policy option package proposed by the governor. So the bill itself, 5011, I have it up here someplace in one of my many tabs. The main funding items in 5011 are housing stabilization, as written, is 751 million. Rental housing assistance, 37.8 million. Multifamily rental housing program, 6 million. Single family housing, 64.7. Disaster recovery, 1.058 million. And debt related service for bond activities, 272. And that adds up to about the number that Eric was mentioning. And then if you add the POP in for the shelter, then you end up with that's the close to $2 billion or close to $1 billion that I mentioned. So it's a lot of money. I mean, the other I'll share on this housing issue that the other complicating factor that really has come to light and is being discussed in the building is that the numbers of unhoused individuals and the amount of housing being, well, first of all, the number of unhoused individuals is not coming down in the Portland metro area. So we are continuing to see very high levels in the Tri-County area, slightly different in Clackamas and Washington County and Multnomah County. So that's leading some people to say, is the money we're spending working? And then the second issue is this question about federal funding, where a lot of federal programs in the housing world are being cut. So this again leads to that whole discussion about, does the Ways and Means Committee put money aside? Maybe they don't spend all of this. Maybe they put money aside into responding to crises that might arise if federal funding for housing programs is being reduced. And we're already seeing it in the homeless youth space. You know, J-Bar-J in Central Oregon has received fairly significant amounts of funding for their youth homelessness proposals. And there's concerns that some of that money might be clawed back or not be available for the next year.
Well, I guess that my final question about all this is whether we have. I can't recall whether the county has taken a formal position on 5011 or this POP 501 for shelter operations funding, but if there's any part of the state that needs this money, it's us. You know, we are so far behind on the amount of workforce and affordable housing that we need. We these kinds of stabilization funds are one of our best buffers against more people becoming homeless. And you know, unlike Portland, I mean, we have made progress on at least stabilizing the numbers of people who are homeless, and in some cases bringing them down in the last couple of years. And we can only accomplish that because we have built pathways out of homelessness for people, and we can only move more people out of homelessness if there is more low-income and affordable housing available for them to go to from the St. Vincent villages or the Oasis villages, or from safe parking and places like that. You know, there's a lot of good folks who are ready to make that move. They just can't afford the limited amount of apartments or other types of housing that are available.
Commissioner Chang, I was told, because we do have 42 two-bedroom apartments in Bend for $1,800, less than $1,800. And there were 80 people in the navigation center. And I was told that, no, those people, it's a bigger issue. We've got mental health and we have drug abuse. And housing is not going to solve it. We've got to help the people with their drugs, and we've got to help them with their mental health. But just I was told that, no, you can't just put two people in a two-bedroom apartment. That's not going to be successful. So it's clearly a bigger issue, and thank goodness we're having some things that are going to be a little more helpful. When our one facility, the 16 beds, it's a drop in the bucket.
An $1,800 market rate rental unit is unattainable.
If you make $20 an hour, you can split it. It's $900. That is actually because if you notice, Amazon that's coming in, they came on the news saying they're going to pay $23 an hour. Does that help anybody live here unless you have two people joined together? Yeah, no, somebody actually calculated it out. It is, if you can have a job where you're making $20 an hour, you can afford $900 a month in rent.
No, I'd encourage you to do the math.
I did the math.
You need to, for someone to afford housing, it needs to be 30% of their income or lower. If you play that out, what it takes to rent an $1,800 a month apartment
they're actually less than 1,800. I don't know exactly how much, but they were less.
It does not line up with the median household income for this community. There are lots of people who are making median household income who are paying more than 30% of their income for a place to live in our community. That is, industry standard, federal and state government standard. That is the metric for whether housing is attainable and affordable or not.
Yeah, well, then I also brought up the fact that my son, who moved from California, is now paying hundreds more are losing hundreds of dollars in Oregon taxes because he moved to Oregon. So explain that. That's the other side of it. We take out more taxes here.
He's not paying any sales tax on anything.
Oh, you
which
pay
is
tax.
one of the differences
It's still higher
between
tax
this state.
Don't give me that
states.
sales tax thing.
Sales tax is one of the ways that we could diversify our tax base, make it more stable during times of recession, and actually reduce our other tax bills by having a sales tax.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's move on.
Thank you. So, Jen, what is the next bill?
Jen had to hop off for just a moment.
Okay.
I think the next bill, Eric, I think that is in your court as well for the law library.
Yes, thanks, Nick. The next discussion item is Washington County has drafted a letter to the Ways and Means co-chairs to talk about law library funding. And they asked if Deschutes County wants to if we want to add our logo to the letter. As background, law libraries funding comes from court filing fees. Those funds now go to the Oregon Judicial Department, and then OJD sends money to counties for law libraries. As you know, we contract out with Deschutes Public Library to operate the law library on our behalf. But the issue brought up by Washington County is the OJD proposed budget has $8.7 million for law libraries throughout the state of Oregon. And for many counties, their proportion, the amount they get, that's not enough to operate the law library in those counties. And so the letter asks that instead of $8.7 million in the OJD budget, that there's $11.5 million to support county law libraries. Now for Deschutes County, in the current fiscal year, we received $177,000 from OJD to operate the law library, and we paid Deschutes Public Library $182 million. $182,000. That's the cost for Deschutes Public Library to operate the law library on our behalf. And so the delta for Deschutes County is only about $5,000 in terms of how much money we get from the state is $177,000. And then for Deschutes Public Library to run the law library, it's $182,000. So that's just $5,000 more for us. We're able to cover that because our law library fund has some beginning networking capital that we're able to tap into. But ultimately, the question for the board is do we want to add our logo to the letter from Washington County to the Ways and Means co-chairs?
Eric,
So how much is in our working capital then, Eric?
We have about 200,000.
Okay, so taking 5,000 out is pretty immaterial.
Yeah, and the reason why we have that buildup is when we operated a law library, we had a part-time librarian. It was open 20 hours a week, so we were able to build up that fund.
Yeah, I mean, given that the state funding is pretty much adequate for us currently, I would want the state to save that money for other things.
Okay. And I mean, the other thing is the Oregon Judicial Department, they may prioritize the funds not to increase it for law library. So if we talk to our circuit court, I'm not sure that the law library increase would be their priority.
I agree with Commissioner Chang. There's so many other things that are in need of funding.
Very good. Thank you for the discussion.
Thank you. Anything else then, Eric?
Not
That
for
was all you
me.
had?
Not for me, but back to Jen or Nick. I don't know if there was one more
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. No, the two key bills to discuss were in your court this morning. So nothing else from staff, if there's anything else from commissioners or Doug.
Oh, Doug, I was wondering, 2597, I believe it still has life, correct? It's the dental bill. It has bipartisan support.
Yeah,
And
Commissioner.
dental care is like, it's the
Yes.
first thing for healthcare, honestly.
Yeah, they're like all those other bills that have a fiscal cost. That's at Ways and Means, and they are trying to determine how much they have at the end of the day. But dental issues certainly have been a hot topic. In fact, I saw the Advantage Dental and Willamette Dental folks in the Healthcare Committee yesterday, having a conversation with the chair on dental issues and dental reimbursement rates. So that's one of those bills that's in the end of session discussion.
Okay. All right. Well, I've been listening to Advantage Dental, and I do agree with them. I think dental care is, if you can get people so they go to the dentist when they're young and then realize it's not that terrible of an experience. So
Mhm.
anyway, okay. Well, good. That's good to hear. Are there any other questions from our very dedicated group of people? Any worries, any discussions, anything you'd like to bring up?
I saw Holly's eyes roll with any worry, so.
Yes, Holly? Oh, Holly.
I am very worried about impacts now. I have to say that's definitely got my ears perked up. So please, keep me posted on anything you're hearing around that. I'm also curious. I mentioned just kind of CJC in general. Would that impact deflection dollars as well? Is that kind of on the table as part of the concern, or?
Well, I mean, there's continuing to be this debate in the building that deflection dollars should only be spent for those tasks that are specifically deflection, to which I argue back, and the rest of the AOC lobby team has been arguing back. Okay, that's fine, but then you can't not fund these other parts of the system that make it work for individuals. So that really is going to be the question. I mean, I do worry that that panic will set in among the Ways and Means budget writers, and this really very small change in the available revenue. I liked Representative Retsky's analysis. It's like we're going to arrive 18 minutes early and you arrive 15 minutes early. You're still 15 minutes early. The sky is not falling. The end of the world is not near, and we still need to invest in our populations. Because the mistake we made in the last downturn in 2009 and 2011 is, and we were in a very different situation, but the legislature in 2009 just stopped spending on many programs. As you might recall, they stopped spending money on many pharmaceutical programs for seriously ill people. That was one of the first things they put on hold, and people started dying. And they had to have a special session to come back because they had made this terrible mistake. And I really hope that the Ways and Means Committee, it's just my soapbox, but I hope they don't make the same mistake again and cut programs that will actually lead to higher costs or fail to invest in programs, because, it's cutting off your nose to spite your face. If we end up, if homeless youth programs or impacts, transition programs for people coming out of incarceration, if those types of programs, which keep people healthy and employed and out of trouble, go away, then we have mandatory programs that we have to spend on that are more expensive. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but that's the message I think we have to continually share with the budget writers over the next few weeks. And we do have a lot of people on Ways and Means. We have a lot of our members who are on Ways and Means. So those types of arguments are worth us making back to our delegation.
Thank you. Let me know if there's anything you think I can be doing to support that message, or anybody I should reach out to. Thank you.
Holly, I probably be going over there soon, and I definitely will be supporting your programs.
Thank you so much.
Well, we have to keep them. And as Doug, that was really a terrible example to use, that people died because of programs that were cut. So, I love the 3-minute, that picture will be with me when I go to the Capitol. And that's good to hear. And I wish somebody would talk about the Capitol building, because when is it going to be done? Not only is it 4 times more expensive than what they originally thought, is it just going to drag on forever? I mean, are people that working on it on a permanent retainer or something?
Before we leave the topic of impacts grant, may I ask, Doug, can you walk us through which Ways and Means subcommittee is going to be focused on that, and which legislators that we know we should be making sure that we continue to remind of the importance of that program? Yeah,
well, one of the key people for us is going to be our local senator, Senator Broadman, who's the Public Safety Subcommittee chair, and who's really dug into this, and I think has talked several times with our staff and with you as the commissioners as well. So I think he is a key and someone who we, as we really, honestly, I think a lot of these budgets will be written in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So if there are kind of last minute pitches or letters about the importance of these programs that we want to put together, Holly, you or DV and the team want to put together a letter, I can hand deliver that, or we can get a conference call. I think a good example is the call that we had with Rep. Krupp here just last week. I think that was super helpful. And I think that I'm told that our input is leading into some changes in the amendment. So haven't seen the amendment come out. So there is an opportunity. I mean, the legislative process is meant to be thoughtful and deliberative and collaborative. So any input that we have with, I mean, we've got the Judiciary Chair, who's also the Addictions Committee co-chair, and we've got the Public Safety co-chair. So we have 2 people in 3 very key slots. You know, on Natural Resources, we have Representative Levy as the co-chair of the Natural Resources Subcommittee. So our delegation is in a good position. So any efforts here the last days, the last weeks of the session to summarize in clear and concise manners our concerns or our input is of great value.
I do think
Would-
Senator Broadman has indicated, you know, he's seen the stabilization center. He knows impacts funds it. He's been supportive all along. So I feel good about that. If we need to sort of summarize that again, I also testified before him on this. And so I think he's pretty well versed in that. But if there's a letter or summarizing kind of the rest of the CJC funding that needs to be emphasized, I'm happy to be a part of any of that.
Yeah, I think that'll be good, and it might give him something that he can share with his colleagues on the full committee. I mean, a lot of these decisions are made by the co-chairs. So the co-chairs are right now figuring out, okay, here's what we're going to spend, total amount, and then how does that divide for each of the subcommittees. So the Public Safety Subcommittee will be given a pot of money with some direction from the co-chairs. I think this session, they will allow a little more discretion of the subcommittee itself to make decisions. That has not been the case the last 4 or 5 sessions. It's been the full committee making all the decisions and then telling the subcommittees what to do. I think this session, they are giving a little more ability for input for those subcommittee chairs. So reminding and summarizing what we've been telling them on these key issues over the last few weeks is, I think, of some value. It doesn't have to be long, maybe a page with some bullet points. These are really important programs to us. And if you want more information, we can provide it.
Shorter, and so you know they'll read it. 3 paragraphs, please. Yes, and let me know. Now, Davy, did you want to add anything this morning?
No,
I know you're.
I support that idea. Thank you so much. I mean, the same spot as Holly, in relation to the CJC funding and of course, just general community corrections funding. So I am happy to help put bullet points together or just add the bullet point for my particular areas and pass that on to somebody else. But I do appreciate the continued support and feel good that we've got good relationships with Rep. Kropp and Senator Broadman in particular.
Well, don't forget, we got the 15 million for the courthouse because I went over the last day after the Sisters Rodeo, happened to take the right friend and who had a relationship with Senator Steiner and asked for, I think I asked for 25 million maybe, and we got 15, which actually was a godsend. But, you know, Representative Breeze Iverson said, Patty, you're going to have to go back over there because, and Doug, you didn't know, why wasn't Deschutes County getting any courthouse funding? And so went back over, even though we had 7 legislators that were supporting it, signed the letter and everything, I had to drive back over there at like 7 in the morning and do our last beg. And thank God, you know, thank goodness we got the money because, you know, you just keep repeating the message but you've got to repeat it at the right time.
Yeah, I think, Commissioner, I think you're exactly right. Timing is important, and timing is everything, and keeping things at the top of their minds. I mean, another example is Core 3, which is a county priority. You know, the one thing that I think that the Ways and Means Committee will do, but needs to be reminded, is that projects they've already invested in, they should complete the investment. Don't leave a project hanging. That makes no sense. I think they believe that, but there are, you know, a few of these capital projects. Another one is the Willamette Falls locks, which they've already invested half the money. It would be kind of silly for them not to complete the investment. So that's another example. But on any of these funding items that are important to the county, if staff, you know, can work with Nick and Jen, and we can put together a letter for the commissioners to take a look at. But I agree, something very short, bullet points, you know, something you can bold it and underlined and flashing yellow lights, you know, maybe on colored paper, but just something that'll stand out.
And one more thought on these reminder letters. We can make the cover letter very short and we can attach the testimony that we've already provided. If they need a refresher, but if we want them to just read a 3-paragraph, very short 3-paragraph letter to refresh them, I think we can keep that really short in part by just attaching what we've said to them about impacts or community corrections funding before to the back, and they can, if they remember that stuff already, they can go, they can skip the attachment, and if they need a little reminder, then the attachment's there for them. And that would be a way to keep these letters short. And I would request or suggest that we specifically do those 3 letters: an impacts letter, a CJC letter, and a community corrections letter. And again, you can just reference what you've already said and attach it to keep it real short and sweet.
Yes, definitely. I don't know if anybody's listening that can do that for us, but hopefully Jen will pick it up and we can get this done as soon as possible. So, okay. Is there any other important news? Holly?
Yeah, just to clarify process, if Nick, I don't know if Jen is willing to sort of be our point person for this. And I just want to clarify, are we doing am I doing one short paragraph for impacts with the testimony, and then we're each doing a separate one, or one letter that has high level bullet points for the 3 programs? Okay, and then attach testimony for each of those as needed.
I mean, I would say whatever makes sense in terms of the target legislators, and target committees. Break it up or lump it what in whatever way it makes sense to kind of give some personal customized, advocacy to the people we're trying to reach out to.
Seems like, I mean, I don't know, this is just my thought, but I think, we work so collaboratively together. These topics are tied together. I think it makes sense to sort of have a 1-pager that's really high level, quick, that just reminds them of our important topics for Deschutes County. And then, and if Jen could help us compile that, that would be super helpful.
That would be perfect, wouldn't it? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
If that sounds right to DV2, then that sounds good to me.
Yeah, great minds think alike, Holly. I actually put together this week a top 5 list that I was working on for Central Oregon projects, most of which are Deschutes County or shared with COIC and COCO. And it was literally 5 1-sentence bullets, bold, underlined, just something that they can have. The other thing I'll say is that I think Ways and Means, if we can remind them that spending money saves them money, that really is a key. And a lot of what we're talking about, if you get someone out of incarceration or prevent them from being incarcerated, and you lead them through wraparound services to employment and to housing, then they're cheaper for society. So a lot of our programs save money, and LFO has been very bad over the past 15 years of calculating that. What are the programs that actually save money? You got to spend a little money up front, spend $10, but you save $15, or you spend $10, you save $400. But it really is, the LFO analysis system needs to be dynamic and not static. And unfortunately, all too often their analysis is just a static analysis. We're going to spend $10. That's $10 out of our pocket. Well, there'll be $15 out of our pocket if we don't spend the $10. So that's the kind of reminder I think we can provide to them.
Prevention is the hardest thing to advocate for.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Okay, what I'll do is Jen had to hop off. She has a family emergency deal she's having to tackle right now. I'll coordinate with Jen, and then Doug, if you can also just help us with the key pieces that we're going to put in this one letter, and we'll aim to get this out just as soon as we can. Hopefully today, but it may be Monday.
Yeah, it sounds good. And Monday's fine.
Okay.
They'll be distracted today, even by Tuesday morning. I mean, it still would be fine. So.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see you later.